Connected. Started by you. Okay. All right, we'll do that again. So now that we're recording, we'll open the Finance Committee meeting on 4/27/26 at 7:02 p.m. We have Billy Haddad on remote, so all votes will be all roll call votes. So we'll do a quick roll call attendance. Mike Krager, Carl Hummel,
Ron Saluda,
Billy Haddad.
great. All right, so first item on the agenda, review and approve the updated bottom line budget to reflect additional information presented by the town administrator. Given that we need to talk through this as part of the warrant articles, I am okay passing over this unless there is concern, and we can get into the warrant articles, and the bottom line budget can just be discussed as part of the budget warrant article 4. So unless I have a concern.
Makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, so we'll pass over item 3 and we'll get right into the rundown and review of the ATM warrant. So Jeremy, I'll hand it over to you to share.
Thank you. All right, so can everyone see my shared memo here? So just wanted to start with some facts and figures. So we got free cash certified in the fall at $2.2 million. We spent about 1.2 million of it, with rounding there. $913,916 remain in free cash. And as a reminder, whatever's not appropriated at annual town meeting will then roll over and will not again be available until free cash is certified in the fall. So then our free cash going into fiscal 27 will be whatever surpluses we ran in fiscal 26 plus whatever's left over of this amount. Here's a breakdown on stabilization, where it's been since fiscal 2019. So we have more than doubled the balance in stabilization since 2019, drawing on it in small amounts a few times, not adding to it a few years. But in my tenure here, the town's been in a great financial position, and the start of that had absolutely nothing to do with me. I walked in after a fiscal year ended, and we had $2 million in free cash. So we've contributed $300,000 on 2 separate occasions in the past 2 fiscal years to bring us to about $2 million in stabilization. Capital stabilization is $566,000, and as a reminder, we can put $100,000 per year on that per the special act, which the town has done the past couple of years. And I propose to use that for Providence Street culvert and minimizing the impact on taxpayers there. So the first, and as a reminder, this meeting is for the public meeting to satisfy public meeting on the budget to satisfy the Finance Committee's obligation to do so, but also the Finance Committee bylaw says no motion at town meeting shall be in order until the Finance Committee has expressed its opinion on it. So that's what this meeting is. So we're going to go through all of the articles that have to do with an expenditure of money, and you're going to tell me your opinion on them. Make sure I have some paper ready. All right, so the first one to do with expenditure of money is Article 2. So it's bills of a prior year. So I don't have them all right now. We have 2 small bills, like a Staples bill and a World Band bill for like a charger or something.
hear us?
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Jeremy?
Yes.
Okay. So just for operations here, I think we will go through each article, and then I'll bring a motion to recommend to the town to support the article. That way the information is fresh in our minds as we go through the article, as we go through the warrant. Instead of just going top to bottom and then having to re-ask questions back at the beginning. Okay, good.
Makes sense.
Oh, yep. And Jesse joined us. So Jesse, can you say your name, please, as a part of roll call attendance?
Jesse Earl.
Great, thanks. Okay, so sorry, Jeremy.
No, not at all. It's I've come to find out it's difficult for me to hear folks in the room trying to speak when I'm speaking. So I'll try to slow down and give some pauses to give you all a chance to interrupt me. So I don't have the list of all the prior year bills. We have a number of National Grid bills that weren't billed for streetlight stuff. And we're working on how to apply previous year's credits to minimize the amount that we need to come to town meeting with. So I still working with National Grid, and I don't have a number on that now, so I don't actually expect a recommendation from Finance Committee right now. This may be a meeting right before town meeting, so we can minimize the amount that does come from prior years.
It wouldn't be a town meeting if we're not having a 30-minute one right before.
So Article 3, see if the town will vote to fix salaries and compensation of elected officials. So this is, there are $2,000 stipends for a select board, including an additional $200 for the chair, and then small stipends for some other bodies. None of that has changed. The only thing that changed is the town clerk base salary. It was discussed at length at the FinCom select board meeting and included in the select board's recommended budget to town meeting. So the town clerk is in the unique position amongst full-time town employees of having their salary called out into its own article. But this was agreed to by select board in concert with discussion with Finance Committee, and is part of our implementation of the compensation and classification study that the town did.
Great, thanks, Jeremy.
So I'm taking the notes. What's the dollar amount that's going to appear in the motion so that I have that as a record of what we're actually going to be voting on?
That's what's
74,
so that's
577?
That's the base salary. Give me 1 second. I should have had that up. I apologize. Because the town clerk also gets a small amount of stipends so the town clerk gets $3,800 in stipends, municipal hearing officer, amongst some others. It will be listed in the motion. So the total town clerk compensation is $91,100.
And that's the number that'll appear in the motion?
Yes. Well, I have yet to hear back from council. So it either will be the constituent pieces of 87,300 and 3,800, or it will be the finality of 91,100. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But for purposes of your obligation, supporting Article 3 is sufficient, or not supporting.
Okay. So can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 3 as discussed by Jeremy?
So moved.
Second.
I'm going to go with Chessie.
All right. All right. Any discussion?
It'll make my life real easy if we keep doing that. For
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to vote a recommendation, so we have to do it. Okay, any discussion on this article? As Jeremy said, we had a lengthy discussion between the select board and finance committee, so.
One question.
Yeah.
So, even though this is a select board item, we're voting on it to support it.
No, so like every year, we have to vote recommendations for our articles that have to do with financial credit.
So the moderator will say Article 3, what's the recommendation, and we'll move forward and say whatever the vote is.
Yeah. So, all right, any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor?
Carl Hummel, yeah, aye.
Jesse Curl, aye. Ron Zerito, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Rager, aye. Okay. Article 4.
All right, excellent. So this is the big one. I tried to move around articles at last ATM to consolidate consent agenda, and I got some feedback about why wasn't the budget Article 4? So the budget's Article 4 again. So the total budget of $27,759,442.97. We raised a little bit more than that based upon 2 assessors articles, which if you want to jump ahead and get to them as we finish this, because we have guests here, totally fine. But I'll go through some of the highlights of the budget. that have been discussed at length at select board and FinCom meetings. So we fund all contractual obligations, including year one of implementing classification and compensation study. That's not a full implementation. We're doing that, spreading that over the life of contracts. Funding a 32-hour-a-week assistant town administrator, which is paid for partially with HR and administrative assistant savings. So we took 8 weeks away from an executive assistant and made it into an administrative assistant, or take 8 hours a week. Took 8 hours a week from the HR coordinator and made that a benefits coordinator. So we reduced by 16 hours there. And then we're adding a 32-hour-a-week, another senior level administrator for the town. Funding 2 additional firefighters and moves the fire executive assistant from the police headquarters to fire headquarters. Incidentally, I bumped into her today and chatted about her, and she chatted with her about this. And she was really excited and thankful that the select board had included that in the recommended budget, and was looking forward to hearing tonight's conversation. We have a full assessment for our regional dispatch organization that won't hit the town until fiscal 2029, but we know it's coming. So we're funding a $30,000 spacer. So we're going to use that on capital this year. We'll increase it in fiscal 28, and then we'll use it on capital at that point. So then the delta that we need to come up with between 28 and 29 for the full implementation is smaller than going from our capped assessment to our full assessment. MURSD, Mendon Regional Schools asked for a roughly 22% increase over last year's budget. If you remember, last year's budget was a 0% increase over the 25 budget. So we had done that same spacer approach, but with $50,000 for the schools. And that's, it made us $50,000 better this year, but wasn't anywhere close enough. We were able to fund 5.8%. A 5.8% increase, so a little less than a quarter of their increase within the levy, which minimizes the amount from other sources. And local receipts are still budgeted conservatively, but with fiscal 27, approximately $300,000 lower than fiscal 25 after we control for solid waste. So we've ramped up where we think we can get some more, right? Local receipts are what they are. And if you don't budget for them, that just means you have more free cash at the end of the year and you can't use it. And it looks like one-time revenues when really is part of a structural surplus. So we've been bending the budget towards that, not a 180, but getting closer there. So I had some questions earlier, as folks have seen the warrant. There's only one there's only one article for a budget. And then within that article, there will be 3 motions. So motion A will be the town general fund budget, and that includes that 5.8%, about $645,000 increase for MURSD. And that funds all municipal obligations within Proposition 2.5. So no municipal operations is included in either the stabilization or the override request. Motion B would be a contingent general fund budget that increases MURSD by $564,402.62 with an appropriation from stabilization. So I'll talk about that in a moment. We've talked about that at length as well, and I will talk about it again on Wednesday. And then motion C, another contingent motion to pass a budget that needs a $1.1 million override to fund. So there's no actual article or even vote on the override. What the vote from town meeting is because the town meeting can appropriate. So it's a vote for an appropriation contingent upon the funding source being approved at the ballot.
Okay.
So that's Article 4.
Okay. So in terms of the mechanics, I understand motion A. Motion B increases with the use of stabilization. Is it motion A, motion B, or motion C where some of the adds we wanted to bring to the table for the town operations are essentially funded? Is that within all of them, or is that in a
It's all-
is that cap specific motion?
All the town additions. So everything that I talked about up top, I guess apart from the 5.8%. That's all included in motion A.
Okay, that's part of motion nine.
So
Okay.
So the town was able to, if we, we're a partnership, of course, but on the town side of the ledger, the town was able to fund its ongoing obligations plus these additional investments within the levy and don't require an additional appropriation.
Does there need to be a laddered approach to the motions where you need to pass, if you wanted to pass C, you need to pass both A and B?
If either B or C fails, then the school budget has failed and we will be coming back for another town meeting.
Okay, so if you support motion C, you need to support A and B.
Correct.
Okay.
And there can be no amendments to the override amount. The question has already been placed on the ballot by the select board, which it needed to do X amount of days, however many it was, before the town election. And that's happened. And the ballots have been ordered and printed. So if motion B fails, you can't then say, well, I want motion C on a $1.64 million override. That won't work.
And if somebody brings an amendment to combine motion A and motion B into a single motion on the floor?
I'd ask the moderator to rule that out of order because A is only a simple majority, B is 2/3.
You could ask
Good
that, but
point.
is that out of order?
Yeah, and motion A will be. I'll tell council. I'll ask council and tell them to be prepared.
Yeah, I think we should prepare for
No, it's good. Yeah.
the, right? I mean, that came to mind. I can see why that would be considered out of order. That's not going to stop somebody from possibly bringing that up on the floor at town meeting. So we should have an answer that's vetted. Okay.
I would like to talk a little bit about the stabilization approach. If
Yeah, absolutely.
so, this was included in your packet as well. So this is what I've called the hybrid approach. Oop, too much. Sorry, I was trying to make it easier for you. Hybrid math approach. So what we see here in the first column is just where we're at with fiscal 27. And so there's no deficit, there's no remaining new revenue, anything like that. So fiscal 28. So all we see in 27, sorry, is the stabilization use. So in fiscal 28, we say, what's our new growth? These are rounded numbers because they're all estimates of estimates, except for the second line. So they're just rounded. So proposition 2.5 annual growth. And then should the override pass in 27, we get 2.5 on that. A new growth estimate, again, conservative. Cape Roads come online, so we're pretty conservative here throughout the whole thing. And then a local receipt growth estimate as well. So what we can expect local receipts to grow year over year, again, which is smaller than what our historic average has been. And then in fiscals 28, 9, and 30, and this is not what the vote is on, and these numbers are subject to change, and there's different levers we could pull. We can shorten, extend the time frame. This is just conceptually the approach that select board has endorsed. So then, we have 564 that we use in 27, and then in 28, that's one-time funds. So that creates a $564,000 plus, 2% growth whole. How do we fund that? And so we can't do it all at once, or don't want to do it all at once. So we have this ramp down period where we use less and less of stabilization. So then we have this gap from prior stabilization in fiscals 28, or for the whole deal. And then, so what remaining new revenue, the next grouping says, is that bolded number on the top, total new revenue. We take that less the gap, and we have $672,000 left because we have to use 214 to fund the gap. And then we say the rest of the budget's going to inflate at 2%. And what's our leftover budget after that? What's our leftover surplus after that? It's about 0.5%. And then in 29 and 30, we ramp down the use of stabilization. And we have a bigger and bigger gap. We have a little bit more revenue each year, but our leftover money at the end gets smaller and smaller. And then in fiscals 31, 32 and 33, again, or a longer time period, or, if we have free cash to throw at it, a lesser time period. Stabilization repayment. So this is saying we know that we drew upon stabilization and we want to get back. And that leaves us, again, in this, I think projections for revenue and expense outside of 3 years is just kind of conceptual and directional to worry about kind of fractional things with so many estimates of estimates isn't a useful exercise, but to show order of magnitude is. So then we show when we start to do our stabilization repayment, and then we have that gap that persists. And again, I don't inflate it there. The gap doesn't get inflated. It stays at that number because the 2% expense increase lower than that takes into account what that takes into account that same increase. So we end up with deficits of a few $100,000 6 fiscal years later. But I thought it was important to show that as a percentage of budget, it was under 2%. So that's to say expense management, extending the time frame, using some free cash at some point rather than stabilization to decrease the payback requirements, some increased either new growth or local receipt performance. A 1.5% deficit 6 years from now is a manageable target. So that's how the town is approaching using one-time revenues for recurring expenditures. That it's not we'll deal with it next year. It's here's a multi-year plan that keeps us on sound financial footing while reducing the impact to taxpayers. Because if the impact to an average single-family homes in the mid $400 a year range right now, if we added another $500,000, it would be in the $600 to low $700 range. So this was the select board using stabilization to both stabilize operations, so not require cuts on the municipal side, while also stabilizing the impact to the taxpayer.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate all the detail. Does anybody have questions for Jeremy before we get into the motions? And when we do the motions, we'll still have discussion periods. So just specific questions about what Jeremy has presented to us. Okay.
Do people in the audience want to speak on this now or wait until Wednesday night?
Wednesday night town meeting.
Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support motion A of warrant article 4?
So move.
All right. Any further discussion on this? All right. All those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Once more,
Billy had
Mike
aye.
Traeger, aye. Sorry, say that again, Billy.
Billy had aye.
All right, motion passes. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support motion B of article 4?
So move.
Second. All right, any discussion on this? I want to personally say that I appreciate the creativity of the select board and the town administrator. I think that these types of approaches are extremely valuable in trying times. Normally, I would be against things like this, where one-time funds for recurring expenses is not a long-term plan. But I think the select board and the town administrator have shown great deals of forward-thinking planning, writing long-term plans down. There's collateral we can use to hold people accountable to decisions that we're making now, and we can go back to that collateral in detail to continue to maintain focus on ensuring we build those back. These are approaches that I personally used in my own personal financing, and I try to think about that when I am voting on recommendations of how the town is operating financially. So, rainy day fund, for those who don't understand what stabilization is, right? You can consider it a rainy day fund, that money you sock away for when it's raining and things are hard. Things are extremely difficult right now. So I really appreciate the creativity of trying to make sure that we use funds that we put away while trying to limit impact to the town's payers. So.
Thank you, Mike.
My other comment is, where's It seems like we're flying through these votes, but we've spent many, many meetings with the select board in joint meetings discussing every one of these topics.
And we'll be
years.
approving those
So
minutes.
Just want to point that out.
Yeah, for anybody listening, every budget discussion has been a joint meeting. That has been a great new operating model that we've put in place the last few years. It helps make these things easier, and we all have the context. So there's a lot of questions that don't need to be asked from this committee because we've been a part of it. So I also appreciate that operating model continuing forward. So, all right, any further discussion?
I have one thing that one of my neighbors asked me, Jeremy, I'm not asking you to answer this tonight, but be prepared for a simple question. We're tapping the stabilization fund because there's a big increase in the school budget. What happens if next year they come back and need another large amount? And how does that change the numbers in your spreadsheet? Like I said, I'm aware of how that might play out, but you should be thinking about a good response to that.
Yeah, the select board would not be receptive to creative tools to fund large school increases in the next 5 to 6 years. And we're under an obligation to put a school department or school district budget to voters. And if this, and this is not my inclination that the schools will do this, but should the schools no longer be a willing partner and in it with us, and that whole amount would go to an override, and we would say, voters sort it out. This is the town working together with the schools, recognizing the uncommon nature of this. And if all of a sudden the uncommon becomes common, then this would no longer be our approach.
I think the other thing, just to comment on that, is we have to look at exactly what why the school is asking for this, and it's really the health insurance.
1/3 health insurance, 1/3 transportation for special ed,
Right, but-
1/3 COLA, cost of living,
But
salary increases.
I guess what I'm saying is no one can guarantee anything, but they have a third that is health insurance. That
If anybody in town has a perfect crystal ball, I would love for them to show up and be able to help us out with future planning. So that's a call out to the rest of the residents. Your crystal ball is perfect, please show up.
hopefully this is
yeah.
it.
I agree, the why is extremely important, right? This isn't just,
We want to raise.
our ideas are grand,
Right.
right?
Right.
This is survival, so. Okay, any future discussion? Or any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, roll call vote?
Carl Hummel, aye.
Ron Saludo, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support motion C of Article 4?
So move.
All right, any discussion on this? Just a quick commentary again, right? As we were just discussing, I think, as Ron stated, the why is extremely important, and the level of control over the reason of why the ask is so large is a big weight on my decision personally. And I think people need to understand those things of how much is and aren't in our control and in the school district's control. And I very much recommend attending. Hopefully, part of the reason why the attendance of this meeting is so small is because they're at the information meeting that I believe is happening at the very moment. But there are multiple information meetings happening about the school budget, the why. There are plenty of YouTube videos from the school district, from this committee, the joint meetings. There is plenty of information out there. So please digest it. And if there are questions in this meeting, please bring them up before making this decision. So.
If I can give just one more point of additional context, Chair Krieger, like I said, we were able to put 5.8%, a 5.8% increase for MUSD in our budget. The way Upton approached this was a 2.5%, so Prop 2.5 essentially within their budget, and stuck none on stabilization and put it all to voters. So their override request is $2.4 million. They are not, 1.2 or whatever times the size, bigger than us. So I think we talked about the why, and we talked about the plan, but also the sensitivity to taxpayer impact was first and was at the forefront of select board's mind. So that's all I want to say.
Yep, great. No, that's great context. And just for completeness, is the Upton override completely for the school? Are there other details that are built into their override as well?
It is completely for the school. And this is just tangential and maybe, you know, prognosticating voting sorts of stuff, but there's also a $17 million debt exclusion for a DPW facility on their ballot.
Okay. I knew that there were other items. I can't remember what it was. So thank you. All right, any other further discussion or commentary? All right, I'll do a roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Carla.
Ron Sumito, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. All right, motion C passes. All right, article, in the essence of supporting our assessors who are here, we should probably jump down to the other articles. That way you guys can take off if you want.
It would be nice if Sherry could, you know, it's something.
So Article 8 is to so the warrant language, you know, is obtuse. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer from available sources the sum of $18,000 to fund the fiscal 27 portion of the assessor's cyclical inspection program. So Sherry and or Kevin are going to talk about what that means. But the source of funds for this is the levy. So we have a general fund budget, and this is not a number in the budget, but the number is within the levy. If that makes sense. So we use our property tax levy to fund the budget and then to also fund these two articles. And we do it in that way, Articles 8 and 9. We do it that way because this is multi-year planning, and we want the appropriation to survive the end of a fiscal year. So we create a special town meeting warrant article fund, and these funds don't turn to a pumpkin on June 30th like the general fund does. And that is useful for the assessors in their smoothing of the impact of these expenses. So that's why they're called out differently. But I'll let the assessors talk about the specifics.
And
Can you come up where the microphone is?
You guys can join us on this side, maybe.
So could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Sherry Bates, I'm the principal assessor.
Kevin Rudden, chairman of the Board of Assessors.
And Article 8, this is a article that has been on the posed before the town for a number of years. This-
Decades.
How many?
Decades.
Decades. This fund helps to pay for the cyclical inspections, which under DOR mandates, every community is mandated to look at every single property in their community over a 10-year period. So this is an ongoing inspection process that we have to continue on in order to be able to be certified with the state for values, tax rate, all of that. If they fall behind, it can put a monkey wrench in the works in the assessors department with getting everything certified. And
So Sherry, if I can interrupt you for a second. So the cyclical inspection program is the one that has to be done every 10 years and Mendon does it every 5 instead. Is that right?
no, it's an ongoing process that they're doing 200 to 300 properties each year or every other year. Right now, I have someone out doing cyclical inspections and they're doing 265 inspections.
I have the opposite written here. I have that written for Article 9, and I just want to make sure I'm communicating the right information to residents. So the cyclical inspection is the one where everything gets done every 10 years. And then the update valuation one is that's not the case. That gets done yearly.
Right, the update valuation is yearly, that's, working, with, analyzing the sales, that occurred in a specific time frame, developing, where the values are going, are they going up or down based on that analysis work, from the sales?
Okay, so
And
just a
then,
point of order, just a point of order to the committee, these descriptions up here for 8 and 9, the dollar values are correct, and the dollar values compared to previous years is correct, but the description on what they're used to pay for is flipped. So I'll make sure when I finalize my town administrator warrant report before that goes out, that these descriptions get flipped. But right now, as we're talking about Article 8, you should read Article 9 where it says all the rationale. So sorry about that. Thank you for your explanation, Sherry.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Okay, the cyclical inspections, the DOR mandates that you visit each house and hopefully do an interior inspection as well as exterior once every 10 years. What the majority of cities and towns do is it would be an unwieldy burden to go out once every 10 years. Is you divide the number of properties you have by 10 and you do that much every year. So for instance, Holliston, I have about 700 properties a year that we're inspecting, in addition to the other inspections you normally do when a house is sold or something's built. So this is just an ongoing process you do every year. And it just makes sense to fund it every year. So you don't get that big balloon payment, as I call it, once every 5 years or 10 years, or I know some communities, say we'll do half every 5 years. And with 2.5, it's kind of a burden. If you can imagine, you're going, okay, is this the 5th year where we're going way up here? Or do you just smooth it out by having roughly the same amount every year?
My question had more to do with what goes into, this is up from 10,000, so on Article 8 specifically, this is up from $10,100 up to 18,000. So what was driving the increases? That
This is a
number?
recertification year for the town, so our pricing was increased,
Okay,
through the company because there's more work that is going in, during the, recertification year. Which happens every 5 years. We do a full recertification, every 5 years, and FY 27 is our 5th year. So it is a, recert year. So there is more,
So that would go down next
more
year.
that needs to be done.
If I could expand on that, it's not us doing the recertification, it's actually the Department of Revenue. And so what happens is in the 4 interim years, the town presents its numbers to the DOR. And based on your research, they allow you to go forward with what seems reasonable and everything. And then once every 5 years, pardon my language, but I call it the DOR gives the town a colonoscopy.
Yeah.
Having just gone through one this fiscal year,
And you get to pay for that.
you also, it's kind of like when the schools want to build a new building. And the first thing they have to do is hire the reporter, whether it's needed, and there's only so many companies that do those reports. It's the same thing. There's only 4 or 5 companies in Massachusetts that work with the DOR on the research. I will tell you that in the last 15 years, they've gone from fairly reasonable to being very onerous. That's why the cost went up. My own cost went up from 5 years ago in Holliston from $35,000 to this year was $101,000.
You're the tax assessor.
For the town of Holliston.
Sherry's job for Holliston.
Yeah.
Sherry used to be my assistant in Holliston.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I am the full-time assessor in Holliston, and one of our other board members, Ken O'Brien, is the full-time assessor in Uxbridge.
Okay.
We're very lucky. We have a really good knowledge base here. But it's really the DOR making the cost go up by making you jump through so many hoops, and they can ask anything. And literally, the difference is they've gotten more and more requirements than 5 years ago. It actually blew my mind how much things they wanted to know now.
So is this $10,000, is that going for additional costs in-house, or do we have to pay a consulting company?
It's going to it's the same consulting company that does the inspections.
But they just charge us more for this year. Okay.
They're charging us more this year. Because it's a research year, they're doing probably twice as much work.
Okay. So Jeremy, that sounds like something for you to put in the red text when you swap them.
Yeah, and I lean on in places like this where the select board's not the entity which placed something on the agenda on the warrant. I lean on that. So I'll have Sherry put it in writing. So I don't, I flipped which one was which. So I want to make sure that I accurately portray what they're talking about. So yeah, Sherry and I will work with that, and I agree that those are some salient details.
Okay, it gets more complicated every year, I have to tell you.
If the refurb wasn't this year.
We probably would have been in and around it. If I had 3 years that were not recertification, we probably would have been leveled on what had been requested.
Do you expect it to go down next year?
The idea behind these appropriations is to smooth a lot of the cost. So when we go out and we re-procure services, so she said it's a restart year, so we went out and got a new multi-year contract, and that kind of resets our base. So we wouldn't really expect it to go down because this is us smoothing the cost across it. And I will say one of these two, I forget which one, Sherry, required a transfer mid-year in fiscal 25 to pay for it. There wasn't enough there because as we assumed our costs over the multi-year period, they were too front loaded for us, and we weren't able to keep up at the back end. So we were already behind. So 10,000 to 18,000 is a big jump, but we were already behind and needed general fund support to be able to fully execute it. So really the fiscal 26 appropriation probably should have been more around like the 14,000, and then this year would have been 18,000, and it would have smoothed the increases, but we're playing a little bit of catch up.
Yeah, the one caveat I can give you about cost is more and more people are leaving the profession than are entering it. And so what we find is the dollars you have to pay to get people are going up. So for instance, I'm paying $30 a household this year. Last year it was 28 a household. I don't want to know what it is. Well, I'm sorry, it's going to be 30 to 27. I don't know. I'm really wondering if it's going to be like 35 to 40 in fiscal 28, because people are the best way to say it is nobody knows municipal financial jobs exist, so nobody's going into them. And we're getting assessors in at the lower level. The higher level people like my age will all leave. I'm retiring next year. I'm being replaced by a 33-year-old that I've been training for 2 years. And so I'm lucky most towns don't have it. Right now, there are 9 vacancies in the state for principal assessors, and you can't find them. So I just want to give you that caveat since you asked the question. It's probably going to be level, but they may raise the rate slightly. Oh, you're in the middle of the contract, so they can't.
I'm in the middle of a contract right now.
Yeah, the next contract, I would expect it to go up slightly. It's just happening everywhere.
Okay.
I just don't want to give the impression it's going to stay with what it was last year forever.
No, and Jeremy added that it was a contract.
Yeah, I think that went back to when the old assessor retired. Maybe in the last year she didn't budget enough and it came forward.
Okay. Any other questions on Article 8? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 8?
For $18,000, I so move.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse.
Ron Saludo, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. All right, Article 9.
Okay, Article 9, this is the work that the company does in order to assist us with getting the recap sheet. Put in, the analysis, to have the values, certified. And again, as this is a recertification year, there is more reports that DOR comes in and says, well, we want 5 preliminary LA4 reports, in every 3 months or something. So again, because it's a recertification year, our costs are a little bit higher, and trying to ensure that we have enough to cover the cost that the bill will be coming in at.
If I could add, the normal requirements in a non-research year are probably tripled by the DOR. They want an analysis of literally everything. Prove that your land values are correct, prove that single family versus condo are correct. Let me look at your business and your capitalization rate. You have to come up with new maps of all the residential and commercial zones, even though nothing's changed. It's literally an exercise. To me, it's an exercise in generating paperwork. But on the other hand, if you don't comply, you don't get your tax bill set.
Okay. All right, any other questions? All right. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 9?
$25,000, I so move.
Any discussion? Roll call vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Jesse Graham.
Runs, I.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, thanks for your support. I hope we answered your questions.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can we have your dinner now?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Back to 5.
All right. Yep, we'll jump back up to 5.
All right, great. And I'm sorry if I have to step away for a moment. We don't have additional childcare tonight, so we're still trying to figure out bedtime with 2 young kids. So if I have to step away for a second to help out with that, I apologize. So this one's really straightforward. We get money from the state for road repair, Chapter 90. Our current projection is about $460,000, and that's because the governor included an additional $100 million through the bond bill to supplement Chapter 90. Prior to that, our allotment was somewhere in the mid 200,000s. So this is to allow us to expend the money received by the state or received from the state for road repair.
When will you know the amount that will be in the motion? Is that finalized yet?
It likely will not be. The state went about a decade without passing a budget on time. And so, and for 4 or 5 years of those, they were the last state in the country to pass a budget relative to the start of their fiscal year. So the motion does not typically include an amount.
We typically vote on this one with the projected number.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we can do something now projected for 900,000?
For 459,000.
Yeah.
And if the state comes back and changes that, is that something that gets adjusted at special town meeting?
No, it is allowing the town to expend whatever the award is from the state.
Okay. When you're discussing this at town meeting, are you or the highway super going to give the status on the successful road work that's happened in the past year?
My intent is to put this in a consent agenda and not discuss this at town meeting.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, this is one of those, we need to do this in order to get the Chapter 90 money.
Okay.
So, yeah, it hurts us pretty bad if we don't do this.
Yeah.
So,
And obviously, this is totally separate from state funding. This is just us. This is basically just money from the state for us to do work.
Yeah.
Right. The formula is On the first $200 million, it's allocated 1/3 based upon population, 1/3 on road miles, and 1/3 on employment. And then the supplemental $100 million is based solely on road miles. So it helps communities like us. It helps rural and Western Mass communities that have lots of roads and not lots of people or jobs, but those still need to be updated. So yeah, that's we shouldn't expect that forever going forward, but it's part of how the supplemental tax on incomes over $1 million has been appropriated for transportation.
Any other questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 5?
For projected $459,000. I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Rose Muto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. Passes. Recommendation. All right, Article 7.
Is there
Article
an
7.
This is all financial.
Okay, no, so skip, we're not doing 6, 7.
This is the snow deficit. So to remind folks, Massachusetts municipal finance law allows municipalities to deficit spend in one category only, absent an emergency declaration, and that's snow and ice removal. And you can only do that if you budget as much or more as you did the previous fiscal year. So the town budgets $194,000 in snow and ice removal. As a matter of procedure, in order to deficit spend, the highway super comes to select board and asks for permission to deficit spend, and then that amount is transmitted to accounting. So the highway super just can't go out and buy, a bunch of stuff, right? Select board has a key to that to begin with. So it snowed a lot this winter. And we deficit spent there. So in addition to the $194,000 we appropriated, we have a deficit of about $229,000. That number has yet to be finalized as we're closing out snow and ice now. We had a few more, we're chasing vendors for invoices on stuff. It will be finalized by town meeting. It's approximately $229,000 right now. It's 228,9 something, I think. And I just wanted to note that MURSD came and got salt from us. And so they owe us $9,500 or have paid us, I'm not quite sure, but that goes in a general fund expense or a general fund revenue. We can't reduce an expense line because of an unbudgeted revenue. So those things are related, and that money will fall through to free cash because it was previously unbudgeted. So the motion, and so my approach here is to use free cash to fund this deficit in the current year. So we are able under Mass municipal finance law to raise this on the levy for fiscal 27, but that would reduce the amount that we have to expend in fiscal 27 by $229,000. So this is I don't want to say it's one time in nature, but it's extraordinary in nature. We haven't had a winter like this in a while, so I'm very comfortable using free cash for this sort of overage.
Any other questions for Jeremy?
Do you know what the motion is? Do we do another projected, or do we wait until 30 minutes before?
I will have a number certainly 30 minutes before, but for purposes of me writing a warrant report and saying whether the finance committee supports the article or not, I think a motion on the projected right now would be useful, at least for me.
Okay, so we do one now and then have one 30 minutes before the meeting to finalize approval of the actual number.
We can do that. I'm going to, all right. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 7, assuming that the approximate rise in spend is the $229,000? Actually, hold up.
So,
Jeremy,
yeah.
do you have an estimated about what you think it's going to come at?
Yeah, so I would say your motion could be support Article 7 for an appropriation up to $232,000.
Okay, perfect. I was going to get there with a lot of words, so that's much better. All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 7 up to $232,000 additional?
So move.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
So what'll happen is if you end up doing 235 or 240, then you'll come back to us 30 minutes before the meeting. We have another vote?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep, either that or figure out a different way to do it to keep it at 232, because I just said that now. But yeah, one of those two things.
okay.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Ron Smigiel,
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Craig, aye. Great. Article 8, we already did 8 and 9, so Article 11.
Article 11 is the Water Enterprise Fund. So this, sorry for the crazy scroll here. This is the Water Enterprise Fund, submitted by the water clerk, Dan Byer. That's the whole budget for you all to look at. So this is the Water Enterprise Fund. It is balanced, so at 232 in revenue, and or 223 and 223 in expenses. This is all user fee based. So there's the two subsystems that hook into Hopedale Water. There are contractual obligations. We get, billed from Hopedale, and we build our customers resultingly. We have hydrant connection fees. We have some small maintenance. But you can see out of the 223, $170,000 of it is purchase of water. So it's a pretty straightforward budget, and not one that impacts any taxpayer who isn't a ratepayer. Again, this is all on the ratepayer. This is only paid for by people who get the water.
All right, any questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 11?
For 223,351. I so move.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Ron Smigiel,
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Craig, aye. Great. 12.
12 is the same idea for an enterprise fund, but it's solid waste, municipal solid waste and recycling. So let's see if I remember what page we're at. Oh, I don't know. So this is put together by the Board of Health. Geez. So again, oh my goodness, I apologize, everyone. This is a enterprise account paid for by just the people who participate in the program. So if you have, if you're in a multifamily that has or you have a private hauler or whatever, you don't pay here. So collection, it's a $703,000 budget. Collection is the biggest part of that. And then disposal. So we pay two separate things, right? We pay one company to come around and pick it up, and then they take it somewhere and we pay someone else to take it for us. And then subscriber recycling is a little bit less. I don't know if people have followed the recycling markets over the last, 5-7 years, but they've kind of gone nuts. They're back down a little bit, but you can see contractual increase from 110 a ton to 120 a ton for recycling. As recently as 8-10 years ago, we used to be paid for our recycling, and then it was free, and then it was $30, and then all of a sudden it was $150 a ton. So I don't know how much that's been a focus of finance committee, but a $10 a ton increase is not a lot for recycling. And then I believe this is the last optional year we have under the E.L. Harvey contract, and then Board of Health will be procuring a vendor for future years. So a 4% increase to ratepayers.
I've learned more about trash than I ever thought that I would, so.
Is the recycling center budget under Article 2, general town budget?
Yes, that is paid for out of Department 420 Highway.
Yep.
On the details attached, so you, in your, up in the motion, it says 733,755. But in this, it's 703,200.
Yep, that's a typo. It is 703,250.
Okay, great.
Thanks for that.
All right, any other questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 12 at the 703,250?
So move.
Discussions? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Holm, aye.
Rose Zamuto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Gregor, aye. All right, 13.
So 13 is chapter 44, section 53, E.5, which is my favorite reference to MGL, E.5. This is the different parts of revolving fund, different revolving funds authorized by that section. And town meeting has to vote to approve the expenditure cap. So you do not vote on a budget, just the expenditure cap. The Municipal Empowerment Act, which I believe is in its third try to get passed in the legislature, would absolve town meeting of voting this every year and would only obligate them to vote any changes in the cap. As it stands, we have to vote everything, and the only change is Parks Department. So Parks was $20,000 increase, reflecting, stuff's more expensive. But we moved the lifeguards. If you recall from that discussion with the parks, we moved the lifeguards, both expense and revenue, from the general fund to the revolving fund. So we increased it from 250 to 270.
So what do we need to vote on? What's our motion for this one?
So just supporting recommending Article 13.
We're recommending all of the dollar amounts that are listed in black.
Yes.
Okay. So the motion will reflect exactly what's in the article.
Correct.
Yes, and this is I think the only one where this level of detail is printed in the warrant. So folks will have seen these numbers prior.
Yep.
Questions?
Okay, so I moved to recommend with the numbers based and that are printed in Article 13.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Holm, aye.
Rose Zamuto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Gregor, aye. All right, 14.
So I'm going to talk about 14, kind of like the assessor said. I'm going to talk about 14 and 15 in conjunction. You can take your votes separately, but they're for the same project. So Providence Street Culvert, I've had a couple meetings on this, and it needs to be replaced. Is a projected construction cost right now is $2,050,000. And we have that, we've already appropriated $400,000 for design, and we've received $216,000 for design and construction oversight as well. Or we've appropriated $400,000 for design and construction oversight, and we've received $216,000 worth of grants for design. So some of that will increase the scope of oversight, and some of that will supplant town funding. And so we'll have a little bit of already appropriated money to go into construction, and we're looking for about $1.6 million worth of construction grants. And then we've got $500,000 here in capital stabilization. So my approach is to use all grants, draw down the most restrictive funding source first is always the best approach in these sorts of things. So draw down the grants, but we have applied for them, but we've yet to receive notification. And whether that gets pushed into a new grant year is also an open question. Appropriating this money from capital stabilization would kind of not substantively change, where we park that money. We would likely get we would go from maybe fixed income into high yield savings. But it's not huge in terms of where the treasurer parks that. But what it does is whatever the gap is after grants from actual construction costs, we would have to borrow for the rest of it, or use free cash, or use something else. But we'd likely have to borrow for the rest of it. So by appropriating here, we reduce that borrowing. As I talk about Article 15 at town meeting, I'm seeking an authorization for $2 million. There's no world in which we'd borrow $2 million. I shouldn't say no world. Almost no world in which we do that. That'd be if we got $0 in grants, and and the use of stabilization failed, and we had no money left over from design. And if that were the case, I would then look to exclude that borrowing from Proposition 2.5. But as it stands, I imagine any borrowing will be much, much lower in the hundreds of thousands, and that we could fit that debt within the levy, which is a goal of mine to have debt service payment within Proposition 2.5 levy. So that would not be a tax increase for folks. And then whenever this comes to finality and we don't need all $2 million, I would come back to town meeting and rescind the balance of the appropriation. So if we borrowed $550,000, I'd come back to rescind 1.5 million. So these kind of work in concert with each other. They're not necessary and serial like motions B and C for Article 4 are. They can stand on their own and they can have independent solutions should one or both of them fail. But they're the same project. They're part of the same funding approach.
Does Article 14 require a 2/3 vote because it's taking money from a stabilization fund?
Yes.
Okay. And my next question, because my newbie, when you say it would be rescinded, does that mean that it goes into free cash or does it just evaporate because it was never really there?
So this is an authorization to borrow. This isn't real money. So
okay.
it would
Yep.
be rescinding the authorization. So town meeting says, yes, go to the debt capital markets and raise $2 million. And if I don't do all that, if I only have to do that for $500,000 and we have the other 1.5 million or whatever it is floating out there, one, our surveillance reports from credit rating agencies will say you have authorized but unissued debt, and they assume you're eventually going to issue that. So they'll layer it on top of us and say your projected debt load is actually higher than it is. So we would want to rescind that. But also just, truth and storytelling to town meeting that says you authorize something we don't need, unauthorize it. Don't let it linger out there for us to, have.
Okay, the reason I got confused is the first sentence. See if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money by borrowing. That's
so
different. It said about we're going to authorize going out and doing it, but not necessarily doing it. So
town meeting appropriates. That's what they do. So this is appropriating the money by borrowing, and then so if we don't borrow, we don't have the money to appropriate.
I just asked this question because.
Jesse had his hand up.
I'm sorry.
I think this is related. Last year, didn't we take some free cash and park it, or specifically?
Yeah, we went into this capital project stabilization fund.
That's what this is.
And we're about to drain that entirely.
Well, was it already there, or did we just add to it?
So there was two things that happened last year. One, we put $100,000 into this capital stabilization account, which I'm not sure the genesis of this, but we have a special act. It's in the bylaws, control F for your capital stabilization, that we can appropriate up to $100,000, or maybe it's 150, but I think it's 100,000. So whatever special act that enabled this stabilization fund for the town, and special act is something done by the legislature, it caps what we can put into it each year. I don't know the rationale or wisdom behind that, but that's what it is.
Yep.
Yeah, it's all coming back.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
And then there was an additional 100,000 at capital project committee.
So that's fresh in my mind.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry.
I just had a quick question though. So regardless of whether these two motions pass, Providence Street project is going through, correct?
So if they don't pass, we don't have enough money solely in grants to do the work. And I don't think it would go forward. I think select board would call a special town meeting to get an appropriation to do it because it's seen as the most critical infrastructure risk in town right now. So kind of like I said about rescinding a appropriation to the enterprise fund at my first town meeting, that if this fails, we're just going to call another one and ask you to come back and vote again.
My question is actually for Jesse as part of the capital planning committee, draining the capital stabilization fund in order to get this done. How does this relate back to some of the primary concerns of the capital planning committee?
It was, I mean. we put
Jesse,
it
I
through-
can't hear you at all on the video, so you're not going to be on the recording. I can't hear what you're saying.
I said that was the primary concern of the capital planning, that was always the top conversation. And where we tried to direct as many dollars from last year's funds towards this fund.
So this was also the top, if not among the top, if not the top of capital importance, and not many things that we do apart from new buildings that are going to need a debt exclusion, but not many things on the capital planning radar are $2 million. So we have been primarily tapping free cash for things like new vehicles and equipment and things like that. So I, at least in my planning last year and a half, have not either internally or mentally or officially, earmarked any part of capital stabilization for any project other than this.
So next year, the capital planning committee will figure out what the $100,000 should be thought about for us.
The whole 100,000, yeah.
There's a lot of talk about the senior center, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, if capital planning wants to spend that $100,000, we just wouldn't appropriate it into capital stabilization. We would just spend it right from free cash. It would be it'd be making an unnecessary restriction that then requires a future vote with a higher threshold if we were just going to put it in and take it out in the same year or within a year or two.
The whole point of stabilization is to build a nest egg to draw from. So one of the questions I had asked you, Jeremy, we'll just discuss it here real quick. Is there another capital need that the borrowing would have a more favorable rate versus borrowing to do the culvert, right? I don't know the vehicles that we have for construction versus another capital need, and if there would be different rates and one might be financially better than the other, right? If we're gonna borrow to do something on the capital planning committee's list, if we did, would one of those things have a higher borrowing rate than doing the culvert?
Yeah, it's they're pretty close. There's not a lot of kind of arbitrage opportunity here because we're in, like I said before, the kind of fixed income, high yield saving sorts of stuff for non-trust funds. And then a 20-year AA municipality is trading at 3.1% right now. So there's if we could borrow at 2% and we were earning 7% or something like that, if that were flipped or not flipped, if that had a wider margin, then I think there's a lot of utility in that. My focus was, especially because there's an override on the ballot this time, my focus was to minimize any potential borrowing to the point where it could be squeezed inside the levy. Rather than asking for a debt exclusion and asking voters to increase their own taxes again. So a $550,000 borrowing over 20 years with level debt service is about $68,000 a year in level debt service. So I think we can squeeze that inside the levy over the course of the life of the bond. But if it was double that, if we added another $560,000, I don't think we could, and we would need a debt exclusion for it. And I didn't want the town to be in the position to ask voters to increase their taxes another $30 a year for this.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Jeremy on Article 14 and 15?
We should have two votes.
We are going to have two votes, but because we were discussing 14 and 15 at the same time, I'm going to ask about questions for 14 and 15. Okay. All right. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 14?
For $566,379, and I so move.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Ron Zolito, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 15?
Question for Jeremy, is this $2,050,000?
Yes.
So move.
Second,
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Rose Muto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. All right, Article 17.
Oh, I
Yeah,
forgot I
man.
put that chart in there. I should show this chart. I forgot I made this for you. But yeah, that's essentially what I was talking about, the grants and the where we're funding things from.
We've seen him before.
I was looking at it
So-
on my script.
Good. Yeah, I tried to get it to you ahead of time so it was people could sink their teeth into it a little bit.
Super helpful, appreciate that.
Great. I'm glad it was. So the rest of these, and just, we skipped Article 16, which is the citizen petition, that, we've talked about it at length too, will be ruled out of order. It's an attempt for town meeting to usurp, traffic regulating authority from select board, and it's not within the purview, of town meeting's authority. So these are the CPC articles. I thought Anne was going to join us tonight. She has not. These are her comments, so I will, answer these to the best of my ability. But Article 17 is routine. It's a requirement from the state to set up some of these percentages. What we end up doing is having a, I think the administration piece is the only lever we have to pull. In any event, this has been the same article in motion for a number of years, and it just allows CPC to expend.
Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 17?
Or $664,400. I so move.
Second,
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel,
Jesse Curley.
Rose Muto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. All right, 18.
Great. So this is, as we recall, the CPA said they would support up to $100,000 a year in debt service costs related to the fields that were authorized through the last debt exclusion. So this is $100,000 we're going to do each year. For example, this year, the debt service related to it is only $88,000. And imagine none of that is related to turf, but if any is related to turf, CPA can't fund it. So what this will do is we will fund $100,000. We will fund the entirety of that $88,000 from CPA, and there will be $12,000 or 11 and change left over in this account going into next year, and then we'll do another $100,000 because at some uncertain point in the future, debt service will be well in excess of $100,000, and we'll use the accrued residual balances to help offset that. That will, so to be clear, that $88,000 is included in the budget in Article 4. And the part that's being raised is being raised on excluded debt. So it's an excluded tax rate from Proposition 2.5. So we need to do both of those things. But when we go and certify our tax rate in the fall, we'll reduce that 88,000 from using these funds.
We essentially bring CPA funds back into the town's budget. Correct? To cover that?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it is reducing the marginal impact to taxpayers relative to the Fields project, like was promised to voters, as it was when it was sold to them.
is this a 2/3 vote? Reserve fund? CPA budget?
No, budgeted reserve. So it's kind of like our FinCom reserves in our general fund. It's how you can see from Article 17, 65% of their budget is a budgeted reserve. So it's a simple majority.
And the motion is for 100,000?
100,000. And we will literally make this motion for the next 20 years at town meeting. So at some point it needs to go on the consent agenda.
What is Upton doing the same value?
They're doing the same approach. I'm not sure on the dollar value. I think we talked both in concert about $100,000, but I'm not sure. But they are taking the same CPA supporting the fields approach. Yes.
All right, any other questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 18?
For $100,000, I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote. Mike Krieger,
Billy
aye.
Haddad,
Say it again, Billy.
Billy Haddad, aye.
All right, Article 19.
Article 19. So this is to fund affordable housing coordinator. So previously we funded like a stipended position to do this work. And as the town planner was sold to town meeting as a full-time position, part of that was that the town planner will take on affordable housing coordinator, and that will be part of that role's responsibilities. And CPA will continue to support that. So the general fund budget is reflective of the fact that it has this additional support.
All right, any other questions?
Are we getting anywhere with affordable housing?
The town planner currently has a proposal for town-owned property, a request for proposal for town-owned property. I believe there's some money late in a later article to support that.
Okay,
So incremental progress.
Not the last two places that we're looking at.
Sorry, say that again, Jesse?
Not the last two places we're looking at for affordable housing.
Yeah,
Oh.
Both, the housing department.
no, there was one 16 in North Avenue, that parcel there off in the back corner.
So 75 Providence Street, there's an RFP for 2 to 5 affordable units at 75 Providence Street.
Yes, to me. Okay.
All right, well, it's not relevant to the exact article, so any other questions relevant to the article? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 19?
For $15,000, and I so move.
Second.
You don't have to second. Do you second the motion? You don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other further discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Yes, probably.
Ron Swider, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye.
Didn't sound like an enthusiastic.
It's not.
Okay.
All right, Article 20.
This is the same idea as the Fields, but for the police station debt. So this is $126,400, and we've been doing this for as long as the police station debt has been live.
So
And
would we
again,
put this on the
reduces the
same
impact.
calendar?
Yes, that's
Okay.
yes. Reduces the impact to the taxpayer of the excluded debt.
Yeah. All right, any questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 20?
For $126,400, and I so move. Say it louder for the recording, please.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, all those in favor?
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Ron Swider, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krieger, aye. All right, 21.
We purchased the Denton property recently, or conservation restriction on Denton property, and there are grant funds associated with it, and it was understood by all those that any cost savings from the project would come back to the town. So there is approximately $120,819 left over in the account. And then, oh yeah, it says here. CPC is looking to create a new account, Oak and Wall Farm Preserve Stewardship Account, to provide stewardship to other town-owned land. So it this is not new money being raised. This is money that's been appropriated, no longer needed for its stated purpose, and would like a new stated purpose.
Jeremy, can you remind me, the conservation restriction takes this off of the tax roll, so we're no longer receiving a tax revenue from this property?
If it doesn't take it off completely, it greatly devalues it, because it is no longer a developable property, so its market value is minimal.
There is a small part of the property which has a house on it that's not considered, that gets taxed the same way it has in the past. I'm pretty sure that's the way this one gets modeled.
It's similar to the one right here on.
But yes, to your point, when the town takes open space, it takes it off the tax rolls, yes.
I'm actually interested in how much revenue we lost when we paid $1.3 million for the property. Just as an exercise in helping people understand some of these decisions moving forward.
To be clear, we received $1.3 million in grants. What the town contributed towards that purchase is a known number, just not known to me off the top of my head. But yeah, your point still certainly stands.
Yeah, I forget what the number was. It may have only been, it was 900. It was almost $1 million, if I recall correctly. It was 999,000. But
we paid for that.
yeah, we paid almost $1 million for the restriction to be placed on it. And I'd like to be able to paint a picture to folks about spending money to receive less revenue and what those things actually mean. So, okay.
And Mazar will talk about how if it were developed, he had to pay a lot more, had more school kids growing up, there are school assessments go up.
Yeah, and also we've had the conversation about how much of the total town's revenue is actually based off of residential taxes. So
Yep.
this town is supported primarily by homes.
Yep.
And more homes is still a larger revenue stream. Okay.
So in the motion, do we say that it'll be up to 130,000 or do you have an exact number?
On a lot of these CPC articles, I'm going to say I don't have a ton more information than's written here. We need a little bit of help from Ann Mazar on a lot of these. So yeah, my suggestion would be pick a number that I guess you're comfortable with being reappropriated for this particular amount. That's a pretty specific number. And I'm not sure why it's an approximate, but yeah, up to $130,000 would definitely be safe.
Oh, so 120, 120. Okay.
Yeah, it's around 120,819.
I'd say up to 125 then.
I don't have a gut feel on one being better than the other, so I welcome any other suggestions, but I'm fine with up to 100.
And then if it's more than that, we haven't discussed it 30 minutes prior.
Okay. I'm fine with that recommendation. All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 21 with a value up to 125,000?
I so move.
All right, any other further discussion? Can get a roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Ron Smudo, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Prager, aye. Me too.
22. At 73 and 75 Providence, we purchased the house and the septic was not up to grade. So the purchase price reflected that. So now we need to pay the bills associated with repairing and replacing that. And then we will sell the home as an affordable home for the affordable home stock. So there is money left from the paddock property purchase from 3 years ago at this point. And again, it's an approximate. I'm not quite sure why, but that number implies some level of specificity and known quantity. So similar to the Article 21, leftover funds looking to be reappropriated for a new purpose.
When you talk to Ann, can you find out how much will be left in the paddock account after this withdrawal of approximately 26,000?
Certainly.
Does the sale of that house include redrawing the property boundaries of that house? And yes, this is relevant to the article.
I'm not sure. I believe so because the back, yes, it does because the back of the property we're looking to develop for further additional affordable housing. So this would be Form A or whatever off the rest of the parcel.
Yeah, there's just a little late at that house, so we should jump up. Okay, that's good.
Is this another one where, so I remember having conversations about, we bought the property, we needed to spend a whole bunch of money on the house. Now we need to spend a whole bunch of money on the septic, all for a singular affordable home. While I understand the benefits and the need to increase affordable housing, the ROI on that didn't totally make sense to me personally. Okay. We are in it now,
We're in it.
right?
Gotta fix the septic or we can't sell it.
Yeah.
and Make our money back.
That's why I was asking. Because you're just cutting it off.
Right, so that allows us the opportunity to at least develop more of the land into affordable housing to hopefully have a better return on investment on that property itself in gaining traction towards our minimum affordable housing numbers.
Doing anything with that doesn't any possibility of development. There's a little
Yeah.
piece on the left, all the entrance to that whole acreage
Yeah.
is more to the right.
Yeah.
So if they chop up and make that plot smaller, there should be no impact to a future development over it. But that goes all the way to the back beyond the fire station.
Yeah. Okay.
But the cost of doing all that work, the site work, tapping the land was so exorbitant that we had multiple different scenarios of trying to build a 50-unit apartment building there. And it started out as townhomes, and then it went, tried to get it down to a single building to save costs, but just the cost per unit was so high, it was beyond, pushing 750 unit to build.
Yeah.
And then, so it just didn't work. The numbers didn't pencil for that development, so they went out. I didn't know they went out with the smaller, big. I doubt you're gonna see any takers on it, but apparently they did.
So in your perspective, because we're already into this, this is a necessary spend in order to do anything.
To do anything at this
With
point,
it,
yeah.
Money pit, we have to pour money into.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the barn though. Barn. This big barn there.
Yeah.
Rehabbing that barn would be very expensive, but it is semi-historical, I would say. So I was just wondering if that barn is included in just an outright sale of the property. Just sinking more money into that barn would be very expensive.
Yeah, it's been a very expensive endeavor. Okay. All right, any other questions for Jeremy that he could answer?
I'd say up to 26,000.
I'm fine with that recommendation. Can I get a motion to support Article 22 by value up to 26,000?
I so move.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Ron Zamuto, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Rager, aye. All right, Article 23.
Article 23, sorry. So this is for the RFP that I talked about. So at 75 Providence. So we previously looked at 52 Providence. Can you see my screen? I moved monitors.
Yeah.
Just needed to scroll up a bit.
Okay. So there were we worked with Mass Housing and we tried to figure out affordable housing at 52 Providence, but it wasn't financially viable. So kind of the comment before, what's our ROI on this affordable housing? I think the general sentiment is ROI is not great on affordable housing, which is why it doesn't get developed and why the town ends up subsidizing it. So this would be to subsidize eventual development at 75 Providence Street for between 2 and 5 affordable housing units.
And by the way, the comment is less about financial ROI and more of if we're able to get a meaningful return on making inroads towards affordable housing quantity in town with the purchase, right? There's that return on investment, doesn't necessarily need to be a specific financial ROI. So, getting a singular affordable housing unit for the expense does not seem like it's a great return if you could get a multitude of units that has a higher return. Okay.
Yeah, we are a multiple bottom line organization. It's, we exist, we have to run positive financially, but we have other ends which we consider success. So yeah, more units, more affordable housing units is a better return, certainly.
Is this money that is just getting moved out of one pocket to another, or is this asking the town to come up with additional funds?
This is transfer of existing funds. This is not raising any additional funds.
And you think, is this something you're going to put on the consent calendar or discuss?
No, I think this should be discussed. It's a large chunk of money for a new project.
Okay, so I think it would be important to start the conversation by saying, we're transferring, we're not asking for more. We're shutting down the previous project and using the previously allocated money to go into this new place.
So there's no old project being shut down. This is money that has been raised through CPA and is available to the CPC as part of the budget that was previously passed. And so the warrant article says to see if they don't transfer a sum of money. So it doesn't give us the option to raise or appropriate.
Okay,
So
so
it does allocate money towards a project that could be used towards a different project.
Correct.
Yes. Yep.
Planned yet.
well, town meeting 2 years ago said, let's do this. And now town meeting this year is saying, nah, let's do this instead. Is that it?
No,
No?
it's here, so to stay focused on this article, right, we are being asked to either to recommend or not to take 500,000 of our CPA funds and go after this new project, right? Which, if I look at, to build up to 2 to 5 affordable housing units at 75 Providence Street, in terms of return to the town of meeting its affordable housing, I know there are minimums that we're supposed to be meeting per the state, right?
This gets us zero, it just gets us no.
Right.
Whatsoever.
So,
It's in Jeremy's words, it's incremental.
yeah, is there any value of the state seeing incremental increases, but still being so far away from our minimum requirements? I'm trying to judge the value of this for the town versus not financial value, but the value of doing this for 500,000 for an incremental step versus not doing it and trying to figure out something that has a larger incremental step.
Yeah, like Jeremy said, there's gonna be no. Any investment, except for the good that it does. I worked in affordable housing, by the way.
Well, yeah, this is why I'm kind of looking at you as the subject matter expertise in terms of helping me rate value without having a specific number, right?
I feel like putting this specifically is money that could be used to a greater good elsewhere.
My gut is in that same spot, which is why I want to sort of ping pong this back and forth, right?
Yeah.
If that number was for an opportunity to build 100 affordable housing units, right? Now we're talking, that's probably not just an incremental step, probably a major step forward in meeting some of our, I don't know what our minimums are and how that relates to where we are today, but is that sort of investment for the number of units a better increment that brings more value to the town to say, yeah, we could spend $500,000 to do that. Right. Yeah.
So do we defer discussion on this until we get Ann and Dylan in to talk further about it? Or do you want to just call for a vote now?
Is Dylan on the
No.
line?
No,
Or is that-
Dylan, this is Dylan's recording.
Oh,
They didn't log out after they had the planning board meeting, and so I didn't realize that until I started the recording.
oh, okay. All right, interesting. Okay. No, I mean, Ann was supposed to be here. We're not here to represent. I'm going to call for a motion if people want, if, you don't have to accept, right? So you could also abstain. And if the majority abstain, then we can, hold off and, vote again prior to town meeting when Ann can be present. Right, you can accept, you can reject, or you can abstain. If the majority accept, then we recommend to the town to support. If the majority vote nay, then we recommend to the town to not support the article. That doesn't mean the townspeople can't make a different decision, it's just that's our recommendation. If the majority decide to abstain, then we will still need a vote on a recommendation, and we can what I will do is we will hold this until we will revote this at town meeting or right before town meeting. And we'll have Ann present to be able to talk to us about it, and we can reassess our position. The other thing that is possible is to, go back to the town and say that we abstained and could not come to an alignment on the decision. So those are all the options in front of us. But if we do majority vote to abstain, then we'll bring this up again at the meeting that's 30 minutes before town meeting.
Can I just get a clarification on the RFP process? Is the RFP, Jeremy, is the RFP to bid on it per the allocated amount? So like if the bid is to like you are to bid if you can do it for this price.
No. What it says is here's the land, here's what the town is going to evaluate your proposal on. And as part of the, essentially pencil into your proposal $500,000 worth of financial support from the town. Because without it, investors wouldn't get their ROI. So we will get proposals that as part of their own capital stack that they show to us will include $500,000. So it is a far greater than $500,000 project. This is just the
Gotcha.
town's contribution to getting it done.
Okay, got it.
Before we vote, I want to have a discussion with you as my being an amateur parliamentarian on what abstention means. If we hold a vote and there's one yes vote and 4 abstentions, the motion passes and we would be recommending. Now we could then revisit again minutes before and decide whether to change that vote. So I'm just clarifying what abstention means in terms of voting.
If we had 1 yes and 4 abstentions, then we don't have the majority.
That's not the way, I don't think that's the way abstentions work. Abstentions.
Yeah,
are
Carl's
taken
right.
Voting,
Okay,
whereas affirmative vote, and that's the majority of all of those votes that were cast yes or no.
okay, yeah, this is where my expertise here is very limited. So, Jeremy, I would defer to your input on.
Yeah,
that
so
detail.
I would, if, you can also, count noses beforehand, but rather than have abstentions, I think it would be better to have either a motion to table this or the chair just pass it over until you have further information if it seems the board does not have what they need right now.
Or we could vote to reject.
But I think if you
Or-
rejected it, I was gonna say, I would rather table it and hear what Ian has to say, even if it means we have to meet before
Yeah.
town meeting, just because I was gonna say, I don't think right now, there's just not enough information here that I feel comfortable voting with. And I would hate to accept it
I
or
think
reject
there
it.
is though.
Yeah.
Do you want to use $500,000 in town money to put towards building possibly 2 units of affordable housing?
But I think that's the big question I was gonna ask. Because I think if it's two, it says two, if it said two, and it was definitely two, I would say let's vote on it.
But that's what the RFP is.
Right,
Right,
to build up to 2 to 5.
two
For
to
me-
five.
For me, my answer doesn't change whether it's 2
It
or
doesn't
5.
change at all. It's pretty clear. It's only, you're contributing $500,000 to 2 or 5, 225.
My personal position is that I don't believe 2 or 5 units is worth spending another $500,000 on. I would rather see us do something different with that $500,000 and find a way to get actual meaningful numbers of affordable housing in order to get closer to state minimums.
In a planned development,
We just keep throwing money at random properties.
No, that is true. I mean, something.
Yeah.
I don't think I need it.
Okay, I will move to table this until we are able to get further information. And
As opposed to just.
I moved to reject it.
Well, so there's a motion on the floor. Somebody needs to second it.
or it fails for a second and we go on to your motion. Okay,
So,
so we're
fails for a
deciding
second.
tonight.
I moved to reject.
I think we have to just take a vote.
So we
So
would,
I just want to be clear on what rejection is too. This is on the warrant and it will be presented. And then when finance committee gets asked their opinion, you will give a not favorable or we do not recommend. But the item still goes to town meeting.
Oh,
Yeah,
Let's
so-
just, we don't, I know where we stand, Jeremy.
if you don't mind, I'll make the motion. Can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 23? So we need to have a motion to make a recommendation to the town, right? So you can vote for or against that recommendation.
And the
A
recommendation-
for vote says an I vote in the affirmative is I want to recommend to the town to support it. A nay vote is I want to recommend to the town to not support Article 23
It's for 500,000.
in the amount of 500,000. So-
I will second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor?
Carl Hummel abstain.
All those against?
That's not the way roll call.
Yes, I was just gonna say we should make this go on the vote.
Okay,
No.
Yeah.
So
all right, so Carl abstained.
Just a curve.
Ron's a bit abstain.
What did Jesse say?
Nay,
Nay?
yes.
Ooh, I'll say yay.
You're on the tiebreak again, Mike.
Mike Prager, nay.
2-1-2.
Yeah, 2-1-2. So of the voting members, the majority voted nay. So we will vote, or we will not recommend, we will recommend to the town to not support Article 23. All right, Article 24.
So this is CPC again about Sunrise Apartments, which is the affordable units in town, I think on Blackstone Street. So there's a $183,000 repair to the water tank. And the Housing Authority came and asked CPC for a contribution to that, and CPC voted to support a $60,000 appropriation. Normally CPA funds can't be used for maintenance, but this has been categorized as threatening the closure of the units if it's not done. So the emergency situation warranted it. So it's not the whole thing, but it's a $60,000 contribution.
What happens if this article fails?
They have to seek additional funding elsewhere, or they don't replace the water tank and the as this is written and according to CPC's readout, the units threaten closure.
What a water tank is.
So this is the like domestic hot water system, and return, for the units, I believe.
There's just one giant one. Probably.
Is this part of the public water supply?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to any of these questions. I was sorry, I was anticipating a little more support on these, which is fine. I can get deeper answers. That's within my wheelhouse. I just wasn't ready for it tonight. So I don't know specifics on the water system now.
Is the motion going to be for 60,000 or 183,000?
60,000.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Jeremy? that
Just
he
one
can
quick
answer?
question. Do you know how old the tank is currently? Is this, assuming this is the original tank?
I don't.
You
I'll
ever-
try to find the CPC minutes on this. I don't know.
That's,
And the other question is, when was the DEP 12 months extension granted? That way we know when it terminates.
Let me see if I can find the minutes. I don't know the answer to these.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying that's gonna come up at town meeting probably.
And I manages this project. Is this the Milford Housing Authority's maintenance team?
All right, given the extreme number of questions we have on this one, I'm gonna table this one until before.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
There's no detail.
unless it's one huge water tank on the roof, that's, like, I don't.
I've never seen a giant water tank.
Neither have I. That's why I still want to know where this is.
That's why it costs 183,000 instead of 10,000.
Because it's invisible. Okay, I'm going to table this one until 30 minutes before.
Who's our close that?
This is
CPC still.
Okay, you wrote that?
Okay. All right, is there any other questions that we need to capture for this so that Anne is prepared to come back to the meeting before town meeting? Make sure we've got all of those captured and can communicate those to her.
Jeremy, what do you have on your list of questions?
What is a water tank? When the
It's a tank that holds water.
yeah. What's the water tank? Who does it serve? What's the 12-month clock? And what's the consequence of failure?
And who's managing the project? Who got is it Milford Housing Authority?
Yeah, Milford Housing Authority, yes.
How old is the tank? So I'm just curious if we're replacing a tank for $60,000, I just want to know how long it's gonna last.
Should they get 3 bids? It's like I can ask 1,000 questions on this. That's crazy.
So I imagine they were within their, public procurement requirement scope. I didn't say, did you follow 30B for this? I just.
No,
assumed that they did.
I just.
Next meeting.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna table that one. We'll go to Article 25.
This is to restore 2 historic signs, one at Founder's Park and another road sign, both circa 30s. So like any appropriation like this, if they don't spend the whole of it, it would then be returned to its original funding source.
I am floored that this costs $10,000. So I would like to see more information other than just a number thrown up here of why this costs $10,000.
Too, but I'm gonna guess just based on verbiage here, it says restoration of 2 historical sites. Historic sites. So I'm guessing that,
I'm not surprised by this.
yes, and
I have no experience in restoring,
Just a monument sign for. It's social members.
Really?
It's ridiculous.
yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking, just choose, because I'm looking at this as, let's say $5,000 per sign.
Historic restoration.
Yeah.
Historic sign. That
Is this-
each word adds.
Is this the one?
But yeah, we
So
can finally look at the bid.
Yeah.
So I think for 25, 26, and 27, we should just pass over and wait for further input from CPC, because it's going to be the same.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you are right.
yep.
All right, so,
So,
no, we're gonna pass over them and we will, wait for the meeting before town meeting.
Either you could have a formal motion to table where the chair expresses the intent, and if nobody bitches, that it gets done. It's one of the
The
ways.
chair is expressing intent.
The chair can do anything they want as long as they have 3/4 of the committee in agreement.
Hold mine.
And, silence is agreement. Okay, Article 20 or Article 30 then.
yeah, Article 30. So this is to come up with E-code, or like an online repository for our general and zoning bylaws. It's what Upton has, so I linked it here. Right now, our code, as we talked about in a meeting the other day, our current bylaw is done in a Word document updated by town clerk, who does a great job, but it's prone to human error just by nature of it. The versioning of it is not ideal, and it lives in like I said, in a Word document on your desktop. So this would, put it on a cloud-based system and have it professionally updated by folks who do this, make linkability, versioning history, that sort of thing a lot nicer. The cost here is for, whenever you sign one of these software as a service agreements, there's the implementation cost and then there's their ongoing cost. So this 17,500 is the implementation cost, and then 2 years worth of operating costs. So year 1 and year 2. And then we'll put it on the general fund after it. But I wanted to give the general fund a little bit of breathing room for a second and use this for 2 years worth of operation.
Do you have a vendor already picked out?
We do in a from a state contract.
Okay,
So we have a proposal in hand.
I got another question. Jason Cooter, are you there and paying attention?
Yep.
Is this the sort of thing your harness could get thrown at to come up with something for cheaper?
Not
Okay.
something that could be maintained.
Okay,
The problem is operational staff. That's why we pick vendors for these things.
so it's the service contract and the maintenance thing out that's important as well. Okay,
When you pick software, you gotta own it for life.
unless it's a disposable website that's going to go away after the annual town meeting.
Right. Okay, what are the ongoing maintenance costs after the 2 years?
Around $3,000 a year. It's like 28 or 31, something like that. It's around $3,000 a year.
All right, any other questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 30?
For $17,500, and I so move.
Second.
Any other further discussion? I will say I am a big fan of moving to some of these official capabilities and moving them out of Microsoft projects. We lost 300 plus K in the couch cushions thanks to Excel, mishaps. We don't need to do the same thing with our bylaws, so.
And I would just add that every year we wait, the price just goes up because of the initial costs, and so to me, the sooner we get it done, the better.
All right, any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, all those in favor?
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Ron Smith, aye.
Who had that eye?
Mike Gregor, aye. All right, Article 31.
All right, 31. So as part of the fiscal 2026 budget development, the conservation agent was given a market-based and performance-based adjustment that was out of line with the rest of the staff. And Part of the rationale being that it was funded off the general fund for fiscal 26 and the wetlands protections account. So the normal 4%, 3% raise was paid for by the general fund, and the rest was going to come from the WPA account, WPA, the wetlands protection account. Conservation Commission voted as such. You know, the Conservation Commission had supported that salary to the tune of $15,000 the year before to bring it to full time. And then I went to go make I went to go do the journal entry to charge the salary there, and there was never an appropriation from town meeting from that account. So this was already considered by the Conservation Commission and the select board in their respective 2026 preparations, but town meeting did not make the appropriation. So I want to get the specific language on how and then the machinations we need to do accounting wise. But what this really does is just, you know, shores up the plan that you know we already agreed to a year ago.
Let me put on my other hat. As chair of the conservation at that time, vice chair now, we support this. Isabella is a big asset to the town. She just got Agent of the Year award, so this is all part of employee retention.
Great. Any other questions for Jeremy? All right, can I get a motion to recommend to the town to support Article 31?
For $4,088, and I so move.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Ron Widow,
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Rager, aye. All right.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jeremy.
everyone.
I think walking us through this.
thanks, Jeremy.
Anytime,
Well,
and I'll follow up on all those ahead of time, so you'll have all the information before town meeting.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right,
I'll
thanks,
get
everyone.
it's a couple of days.
Okay,
Oh,
we got one more agenda item. We have to approve the meeting minutes.
I didn't get a chance to update the last two, so those you can put off until the next one. And the formatting you're talking about, that shows up when you look at it in Word. When you turn it into a PDF, the stuff at the top
Yeah.
is correct.
Oh, it's okay. Okay, good. Okay. Where's the list that I have?
It's in the minutes. I mean, it's in the agenda.
Yeah, I had the agenda up. Okay, oh, there's the agenda. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes from, we're gonna skip the 14th and the 8th, so the updates can be made. So for February 26th, actually, let me go from the oldest to the newest, from October 6th, 2025, October 20th, 2025, November 12th, 2025, February 18th, 2026, February 24th, 2026, February 25th, 2026, and February 26th, 2026.
I so move.
Second.
Any discussion on them?
Yeah, the 26th, you had me down as president, I was remote.
Okay,
Well, you know, I was. I wasn't there.
okay, so what day is
The
that?
26th. I read them and everything.
4/26.
February 26th. Other than that, it was.
Okay, I will
Yeah, thank you.
amend the motion to approve it, subject to my going and making that change.
Yep.
Before I turn it into a PDF and give it to the town clerk.
Perfect.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. All right, all those in favor, roll call vote.
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Curley.
Ron Widow, aye.
Billy Haddad, aye.
Mike Krager, aye. All right. Any good and welfare for the community?
Yay.
Woo, good job, everyone. It's late.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I don't have the agenda in front of me, but we do have a new member who's interested, is that correct?
We have had a couple of people who have expressed interest in the current vacancy. We have not been able to get them interviewed because
Traveling.
yeah, traveling, and one person who was interested, because we were mostly meeting on Mondays, they had conflicts on Mondays, so they rescinded their interest. So I will let you know when we have someone who can come in and interview, but I think once we get through town meeting, we'll have another you know, what I like to do is make sure we go through and do like a retrospective on the budget season. And we can, figure out how to get this person interviewed should they still want to.
We also have June nations.
Yeah, I forget who's coming up. Both of you guys are?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I filled in previous chair's term. I don't know if that means I'm up or if I can go through the balance of his term. So that's something we can check.
Ellen decided.
We can figure that out.
you had your own term. You didn't fill anybody else's,
Oh, okay.
any specific term. You get your own term.
Oh, okay, so
I thought, it didn't,
you're right.
It actually says on the website.
Planning board, it would have been different. That would have been just filling out. Okay.
didn't profit either Jack.
Yeah,
Right, okay. So I filled in one of those too.
it actually says on the website when your term is,
Yep.
term is up, yeah.
Okay.
So, if you guys are both up in June, you will have to go through the process of just, again, reconfirming or not, if you want to continue, so.
There is a new policy that the select board approved. Jeremy just hasn't got it on there. I keep bugging him about it because I'm up for Concom reappointment. After ATM, he will get it on the website and I'll let everyone know. And basically, when you go and you write your letter, you want to say all of the things that the policy and procedure says you should say. So hold off on it until Jeremy posts.
You can use AI to do it right now.
How you decide to, wordsmith your,
Right.
letters is completely up to you, yeah. So, yeah. but
Just
you will
have
to get-
AI write it. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that out loud.
But yeah, you're just gonna have to go through that process again, so. All right, any other good and well for the committee?
Set the next meeting.
Well, the next meeting will be I wonder if we should do 45 minutes prior, let's do 45 minutes prior to town meeting,
And that's on the 12th, no, 12th. It's the 12th.
I believe it is. I believe it is.
It's on a Tuesday night, correct?
I honestly forget, that's why I'm not saying the specific date, I'm saying 45 minutes prior to town meeting. So that will be our next meeting. We will go through the unvoted recommendations. That the majority were in CPA.
Article 2 and then Articles 24 through 27.
Okay.
And recording, I understand we're supposed to be recording. Do we want to have someone, last time we got an audio recording but couldn't transcribe it or something like that?
No, we got a transcription. and
You
not-
got a transcription of the recording, okay?
I think it's better.
Yeah, I can be better prepared for that and we can use this laptop and just do it like a normal meeting and just have this in the center of us.
Does bylaws actually say it's audio recording? Does it, or is it just recording? Because the transcript is recording.
I don't think the bylaws say one way or the other. It may be in master in a while. And the other thing is, although we may start in the auditorium, if it's as noisy as I expect, if we're recording it, we may want to move to one of their classrooms.
Yeah, I'll, do you want to look into options for us there?
Okay.
On the website, by the way, it is Tuesday, May 12th, 7 o'clock. Doors open at 6 p.m.
Yeah, so
6:15.
So I would suggest arriving in the parking lot by about 6 so that we can get going at 6:15. If you can also make sure that Ann Mazar is aware.
And Dylan,
And Dylan,
so they can come early as well.
Yeah.
And I'll ask Ellen if there's a breakout room that we could try.
yeah, we're gonna have to coordinate that with the school somehow, so.
I'll start with Ellen and then maybe she'll refer me to someone.
Okay.
And,
All right. Any other items, not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting? All right. I get a motion to adjourn.
move to adjourn at 9:11.
All those in favor?
Carl Hummel, aye.
Jesse Perla.
Ron Smutter, aye.
Billy had that eye.
Mike Rager, aye. We're adjourned at 9:11 PM. We shall stop the recording.
Yes.
And stop the recording.
So my first sign this weekend, the yes signs, did you